Hello, everyone. This is Roto Motion and Douglas GB coming at you again with Season 1, Episode 9. We had mentioned that this was going to be our last episode, but as we look through some of the things that we're going to discuss, we're going to actually do an Episode 10, so there will be one more after this. All right, so hold on to your seat and get the kids out of the room because in the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so, we're going to get pretty deep on the time trace tab in the FPGA cat box tester. This one is going to be quite advanced, but it is the result of all of our trace setups, trace acquisitions, and now we can see the results in time trace. I will be playing the role of you, which is the student or the observer, and Douglas will be taking us through the time trace tab. So take it away, Douglas.
Yeah, you said it. The trace setup, we loaded the test of centering and then halting. And you can see that the vector commands over here, center, and the numbers are the delay of how long to wait after centering. Um, Typically that's not zero, but we did that for a reason. And then, so it centers and then halts. And it only needs to halt once. I don't know why it's there. Um, we're not going to bother acquiring because we already have the reference signals. So we're just going to concentrate on the results, which are here. I've already talked about the different signals, like the opcodes here, which are, this is 3 bits in one, 0, 1, and 2 all together, and they're displayed not individually, but they're displayed as the command, the Atari vector generator command that those bits represent. They are down here, that depends on you if you want to display them. You can see their individual values down here, OP0, 1, and 0 again. We could fix that if we wanted to. Down here, right? Could change that to OP2. And then I think you have to refresh that. Yeah, there you go, OP2. So you can see them individually, but it is in fact more useful to see them interpreted for you. Same thing with ST0, 1, 2, and 3A. Those again are these output pins of the PROM. And they're here individually, but their hex values are shown here in line 2. What are those hex values all about? Well, that's this here. This is the vector state machine diagram. And it has the state, like idle, and the number that corresponds to 0. And that's what, when the vector is not running, when the state machine is not doing anything, it's in state 0, going 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, not doing anything at all. When the vector go command is sent, it tells it to go to the next state, state 9. Why is it 9? Ask Atari. And state 9 does certain things. It turns on latch 1. Now if we go back to the schematic, so that latch 1 is here, right? It's the output of this LS42. So it state 0 is idle, state 9 is such that these output pins fed into this LS42 result in that latch getting activated, going low. And then that has certain repercussions on the board. So latch 1 on Space Duel goes and makes DVG bits get latched as opcode bits 0, 1, and 2, as well as DVY. So what does that mean? That means that state 9 now has triggered the opcodes to be sent to the PROM. And that's why these first two vector commands aren't really, they're kind of spurious, which is why Fred has this number to skip for match. It means, you know, those are going to be kind of whatever they were from last time it was running. The opcode has not been loaded during the state 0, and it only is loaded at the end of state 9. So that's why after state 9 we finally see that centering command is now the opcode that the thing is working on.
Hey Douglas, where can I find that flowchart document?
That is in the shared drive. There's one for all the vector games, and then there's the separate one for Star Wars, because Star Wars is a little bit different. It's basically the same, but these three, like these three, well, you can look it up. But yeah, it's in the shared drive.
Okay, I know that I know what you're about ready to get into, so this is a good document to have, and it is on the shared drive.
Yeah, yeah. It gets a little, like you said in the introduction. It gets a little crazy in here, but the thing to take away from this is that like pick a command. Like our first command is center, so the center command has a certain route through this state machine. It always starts at idle. 9 is hardwired to be the first one, so it can load the opcode and know the command that it's trying to follow. That command is center in this case. So now where does it go? Well, in that prom are numbers that tell it where to go next. So if it's doing center, then it knows, oh, I'm not doing short vector, I'm doing center, which is included in this everything else line. That means from state 9 I should go to state 8. And as with state 9 activating latch 1, state 8 activates latch 0. And that will do certain things on the Space Tool board, like latch 0, among other things maybe, is here, and it will now load this shift register with these DVG bits are now loaded as DVY, the first 4 DVY bits. Okay.
So Douglas, when you say activates, can you explain what you mean by activates? Are you saying goes high, goes low? What exactly do you mean by activate when it as pertains to the schematic?
The latch, yeah, these are all active low signals. So what you'll see on that, when nothing's happening, these are all high. If you measured them with a logic probe, all these output pins would be high, and one of them, when it goes active, it means it goes, that line over that means active low. So they're high when they're not doing anything, and then when you want that condition to be true, the program sets the bit to low. And why is it high versus low? It depends on the chip that it's trying to control. So latch 0, because it's fed into this data shifter circuit, latch 0 going low goes into this gate, and then in fact it gets inverted because this chip wants a high signal coming in to do what the designers want it to do at this moment. So so whether it's active high or active low, it doesn't matter. The point is that it's being triggered. So during that state 8, state 9 did latch 1 stuff, and there's chips and stuff that respond to latch 1 going active, and then it gets turned off, and then state 8 latch 0 is made active. That does certain things. So like state 9 latch 1, as we said, loaded the opcode. Now we know the opcode. Now we know what path to follow through this diagram. Next stop on that path is state 8 latch 0, does certain stuff, starts that for that vector data shifter, Next state, what's our command? Center command. Where do we go? This way. Center command is hard coded in the prom to go from state 8 to state C. What does state C do? Turns on strobe 0. Strobe 0, another output of that LS42. What does strobe 0 do? I forget offhand. It's in here. Strobe 0 does, does something in normalization. Does is there anywhere else? Maybe that's it. That's kind of, that gets a little further away from the heart of the state machine into the outlying suburbs of the state machine, if you will, and then on to the actual functioning of the board. But right now we're right here at ground zero, tracing through the stimuli and the response that we're hoping to get.
Oh, so I think I get it. So, okay, so in the time trace tab, 098CF hexadecimal, that correlates to that flow chart showing how the center command makes its way around the board.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, those hexadecimal numbers.
To make sure that we pick up.
Yeah, those hex numbers are these numbers here. So yeah, 098. Next one was C, and then what path do we take for the center command? Next, it goes over to state F, and sure enough, that's our next hex value here because we're still pursuing that centering command path. And then after F, it goes back to idle state 0, which you can see there's state 0, and then we hit these ellipses. And what's happening there? From cycle, we've been doing something, all of these cycles up to 6, and then 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up, for 14 cycles, we do nothing. That's what the ellipses mean, that none of these have changed state for this time. And it's not until cycle 21 that then something changes, and what has changed is state, the state has gone from 0 to 9. So what happened there? Well, we did our center command, 098CF, and then we went back to idle. The vector timer was happening during that time. So the state machine was doing nothing. It was idling while the vector timer counted down 14 cycles. And then what happened? Well, remember our program, after centering, we want to halt. And that's exactly what happens, is after centering, we halt. How do we do that? We go from idle, we say, okay, go ahead. It's not a VG go. VG go starts the whole sequence. It's the stop coming out of the vector timer, which means we're not starting the whole vector program over from the beginning. We are just saying, hey, I finished that command, and now I'm ready for the next command in that sequence. So it's not VG go, it's just the stop from the vector timer saying, okay, you can now go on. It's kind of backwards, naming wise, but it says, okay, now I've done the center, now I can do the halt. And how do we do a halt? Well, let's go back to our diagram here. Halt would be always state 9, so you load your command, and then it's not short vector, so it's got to be next is state 8, and then what? What next? For halt, the next thing is F, and then from F to 0. So it would be 0, 9, 8, F, and if we look here, that's exactly what we got. We were in 0 already. 9 loads the command. The command is halt, which means go from 9 to 8, and then from 8 to F. And then not shown here is what happens next, which would be back to 0, idle, and in fact, halt stops the entire sequence. Halts the vector state machine, hands it back, hands back control to the CPU. CPU will now say, oh, all right, I guess it finished doing whatever list of instructions I told it to do, drew everything I told it to draw, and now it's up to me to update the objects on the screen, the score, the players, input, the sounds, everything that the CPU does to run the game. It takes its turn.
So let me see if, as students, I can just summarize what you've said, just so we can all grasp this. In the trace setup tab, the assembly program was to do a center, a halt, and a halt. We then went through and did a trace acquisition of that particular program, that assembly program. See the center, halt, halt.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the time trace tab, showing our results, and as you mentioned, we are going 9, 8, C, F, which is centering. Then we do 2 halts and stop the program, which in effect visually is what the time trace tab is showing us. Is that a good summary?
That is.
We done?
That's all correct, except we don't do 2 halts, because once you hit the first halt, it stops. So this we could totally get rid of this. I don't. It's just there for I don't know why. You see halt appear twice here because it is for 2 cycles worth of the state machine. It is executing that single command. Just like there were not 7 different centering commands. It's just that we were centering, we're still centering, we're still centering. It takes that long to do this job. It takes that long to do a single halt.
Perfect. But that in effect is how we're using the tester to get the results of time trace.
Yeah. You probe, and for different tests it'll be different. But for this test, we gathered, we acquired the signal for the ones that matter for this test. The opcodes, OP0, 1, and 2, the ST 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then also we gathered the F signals because those are, if in this case everything worked out right, but if it didn't, then that would give us a head start on tracking down where the problem was.
Wonderful. Wow. That's a thinker. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's, as you said in the intro, what we'll do on the last episode is, okay, everything went well here, but what if it didn't? And we'll try to get into some analysis of if you get some red signals here, some things you measured deviated from what they should have been, okay, then what? And that's going to be maybe even more of a complicated. Well, we'll see how that goes next episode.
Okay, and with that, we will break here, and we will see you back on the final episode of this series, which, as Douglas mentioned, will go deeper into time trace tab and actually show some areas of diagnose when you have a break that does not match reference. So we'll see you next time, everybody. Thank you.